Welcome to episode 12 of CyberBytes, the podcast. I'm your host, Joseph Cooper, co-founder of Aspiron Search. Today's guest, we have CISO James Azar. James is no stranger to a pod. He actually hosts the CyberHub Podcast every 9 a.m, Monday through Thursday, so definitely check it out. On this episode, we talk about the importance of self-learning and development, his recent experience interviewing and the effects of ghosting and what that can do to the bottom line of your business. We cover the 3 types of CISO, and with something James really feels strongly about, the importance of having strong leadership skills. Well, how are you, man?
Doing well, buddy. How are you?
Yeah, really good. I think congratulations are in order for you, right? New role released on LinkedIn yesterday.
It is, yes. It's a new era in time where I double roll myself, because why the hell not?
Why not? Why not? So is it AP4 Group that you've just joined?
It is. Yes.
Nice. Well, we'll talk a little bit more about those a little bit later, because I know that's a bit of a different industry for you. But what I've been doing with all my guests is just running through their career to date, and really going back to how, first of all, you got into security.
Yeah. So my journey into security is actually a very funny one. And I think, like most security journeys, there's no clear path to how you become a security professional. I volunteered, I somehow ended up there, or it somehow took me there. So for me, it's the latter. I, finished my military service, went on and worked in telecom. And while I was in telecom, security was one of the things I was really focused on. It was one of my roles. And then from there, went into tech. And, go back to 2009, what was security? What was cyber in 2009? But I've somehow always found myself kind of drawn, as we were developing different products and working on different projects. Well, how are we addressing security? What happens if and when these get hacked? And so I started self-educating myself, essentially made myself a master. And I don't call myself an expert. And you notice that I'll never say expert anywhere. People may say you're an expert, but I don't think anyone's ever an expert in anything. You may know a bunch about it, but you're not an expert. Founded 2 companies, one of which was a fintech security company. And both of those companies were successful in acquisitions, and ended up becoming a global CISO for one of my acquiring firms. And today I'm the CTO and CSO over at AP4 Group. So I've switched from financial services to utilities, which I'm told I should start repeating the AA mantra, serenity and thank God for all the things I can control and for all the things I can't. Apparently, because you're going to have to say that a lot in this industry, is what I'm told.
I can only imagine. Where did you do your military service? Was that
U.S. Army?
It was the US Army, because I was listening to one of your pods the other day, and it was you started speaking Hebrew or singing Hebrew.
Yeah. So I speak fluent Hebrew. We were singing Omer Adam, on CISO Talk with Olivia Rose. Yeah, we were singing in Hebrew. It was funny. I put every CISO on the hot seat on the show. Yeah. Right. In the last 3, and my last 3 questions are, what word would you throw in the buzzword graveyard and get rid of forever? Bury it. Never to be seen again, only to see a tombstone with its name and be damned if you say it. And what was the last song you listened to before you came on the show? And what's the book you're reading? And so she was talking about the fact that she was listening to a Hebrew song. And I was like, I listen to Hebrew music all the time. Hell, before I recorded with you right now, I was listening to Hebrew music. So like it's more a beat, and it's fun, and it's how I practice my language skills, because I speak Hebrew and Arabic and a few other languages. And so music is a great way to keep kind of that language alive in your brain.
Yeah, nice. So I know obviously a lot of the Israeli military service end up going through and creating the startups. So that's why I just wondered if it was over that side.
It does seem like that, right? Because but the thing about Israel is everyone's always got military in their background, because it's mandatory. It's compulsory service, right? Yeah. So if you didn't do military and you're from Israel, you're like, how? What'd you do? How'd you get out of it? Because you've got to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So where did so you built and scaled and sold a business. So where was the first CISO role for you? What was that one?
So it was in my own companies, right? Mm-hmm. I never wanted to be a CEO of my own business. Mm-hmm. I've always had a CEO, whether it was now my wife, or at the time it was someone who shared my vision for whatever I was working on. So for me, it was, I never wanted to do raising money, the day of the business, the sales and marketing aspects were nice, but it wasn't where I found my passion. I wanted to be in the technology. I wanted to be in the trenches, and I wanted to up the processes. And, between 2009, I think, to 2015, it's fair to say that cyber was a complete and absolute afterthought. Not a lot of organizations had CISOs. The one that did were the Fortune 1000s. And the CISO role was predominantly policy and not very operational, right? IT still managed security. The CISO simply put out some policies, audited those policies, made sure everything was compliant. And that was the CISO role. And I was more operational, hands-on in my own org because, well, one, I was the founder, so I had the chops to do it. And so I didn't go through some of the growing pains that I think a lot of my peers go through, where some of them could have been IT help desk people. I never did help desk work, right? I never was an analyst in a SOC. I've been an entrepreneur. I've been always kind of wanting to lead. I think that's what the military instills in a lot of us. Mm-hmm. And so that's just kind of, I fell into leadership, but then I realized that good leaders also know how to work with the tools that their people are working on. And so I taught myself everything that everyone would start to learn. I taught myself from a position of leadership. So I spent time learning what people did. Researched it in order to be a better leader to them and be able to guide them, because they're going to look for me for guidance. And if I can't give it to them, then by all means, they're not, there's very little upside for people to work in a company. And this, you're in recruiting, right? Very little upside. But most people don't care about the money. They care about the upside. What am I going to learn? What am I going to be working on? So if you can't give them that, then they're going to leave. It doesn't matter what you pay them. You're just going to have high turnover. So I taught myself everything I did. Everything really, I know today, I taught myself.
Good. It's really interesting.
All these books, and then another library upstairs.
Nice.
I read.
What's your favorite book? I'm going to ask it now.
That's a very, very broad question.
Maybe the last one you read. That might be a good one. The last one you read.
So the last book I read was actually my Torah this morning.
Okay.
Today's we're recording this, and I'm sure this will air later because it's not a live show. But today's the Jewish calendar is very different from the Georgian calendar. So today's the beginning of a month. It's a new Jewish month starts today, and so we read a bunch of portions of Torah in the morning, and every morning before I start my day, I go through about 20 minutes of reading the Torah, and that's the last thing I read today because I haven't had a chance to read anything else.
I know, let's go on to every morning, because I know you host your own podcast, so it's no stranger to a podcast. How and why are you so committed to every day? It's every day at 9 o'clock, Monday through Thursday, right? You run the Cyber Talk Hub.
The CyberHub Podcast.
CyberHub Podcast, sorry. Why, how, when did this happen? Like, it's a lot of dedication, like, I must admit.
I've done them from hotel rooms. I've done them from porches at events, live streaming from my phone, just holding my phone up. So it really started 5 years ago. I started podcasting 5 years ago, 4 years, 10 months ago. In May, it'll be 5 years. And so I've always been a podcaster. I was listening to Joe Rogan before Joe Rogan was Joe Rogan. Nice. Fair. Like that's how long I've been into podcasting. I used to travel a lot, obviously, when I had my own business, and I never got into audiobooks, but I loved the podcast. I loved two people talking. I used to watch Jay Leno as a kid and go, why is this interview only 10 minutes? This conversation could be like an hour long and it'd still be super interesting. And so that's what podcasting was for me. And the further I dipped into security, the less of 5 years ago, the less podcasts I found that had value for practitioners. Almost every single podcast I got into was someone creating a problem because they have a solution to a problem. We're talking about a problem that's serious enough, but then it was all around problems and how this one tool can solve all of the world's issues. But no one was really talking about the real challenges of being in the trenches and having taught myself stuff, having had to work with my teams on a whole bunch of different challenges we experienced. I was like, I'm going to put stuff out there that has nothing to do with selling anything. No sales, no bullshit, just a practitioner point of view. I don't care if I get sponsors. I'm not trying to make money off of this, right? My intention is purely, let's put out great content for the community. 5 years in May that I've been doing it, I've never spent, I think in the 5 years I've spent about $1,000 on advertising in total. So that's about $200 a year. You know, our CyberHub podcast in the morning gets about 10,000 downloads a day. CISO Talk gets anywhere between, 7 to 12, 13, 15,000 on really good episodes. And that's a weekly show that I do, and I'm doing it in seasons now, obviously. So I do like 40 episodes a year, just about. So 20 episodes a season. Now it's season 3, and season 3 will wrap up in June, and then we'll take June, July off and come back in August until the holiday.
On that one, the CISO series, you've obviously spoken to a ton of CISOs over the 5 years that you've been doing it. Everyone has a different track, which you mentioned earlier. What would you say are some of the sort of like the common traits or characteristics that most, or if not all, of the CISOs you've spoken to might have?
So a common trait between all the CISOs is very hard to come through, and I'll tell you why. There's really 3 types of CISOs. And I've kind of broken it down, and it's something I'm writing on my Substack now. It's actually one of the Substack articles I've been working on in part of my book, which is kind of around the whole process of 3 types of CISOs. There's the technical IT background CISO that, did IT help desk, was a network engineer or, an IT engineer, and went through the ranks and ended up in a CISO role. Then there's the lawyers that ended up in a CISO role. No technology background at all. They're simply legal people. And in some organizations, they viewed the CISO role as being more litigious than technical. And then the third is predominantly around compliance. And what I mean by compliance, I mean more policy driven, right? Or more kind of law enforcement driven. So that's where you see former FBI agents become CISOs. So, those 3 traits have 3 very, very different paths. If I'd say one thing they all have in common is they kind of all understand the fact that you need a lot of leadership to be in a CISO role. You're never really there, right? Lawyers don't know tech. So by all means, they try to educate themselves on technology. Technologists don't really worry about compliance until they have to worry about compliance, and you become a CISO. Compliance is typically one of the first things you worry about. And a compliance CISO is a more balanced person I've seen.
Nice.
From the people I've interviewed.
Yeah. How about interviewing for a CISO role recently? Because I know you was on the market and have since landed something. How was that experience?
Wow. So I got to tell you something. And I think every HR person should hear this, right? You're interviewing people for a job that you may feel like you're in a position of power. And you might be, because you're in a position to make a decision whether or not you hire someone. You're also a representative of your company. Your company sells products and services. People associate their experience in the interview process to the brand, not to you personally. A very bad HR manager with very bad recruiting processes can really turn people off from wanting to do business with your organization further down the road. That's something that I think may be overlooked sometimes. I've had some amazing interviews with some people, and I've had some companies where you go through 4 or 5 interviews and they ghost you. Not an email, not a text message, nothing. It's like taking a girl out on 3 dates. Going like, we've had the greatest time ever. Everyone's like, you're great. You're just what we're looking for. And then you hear nothing.
Yeah, I think.
Me or is it you?
Yeah. And the bottom line, then, just talking about sort of the business bottom line, can have like ultimately an effect, a knock-on effect of that.
There are companies that in the last several months as I was interviewing, where I know that if their sales reps reached out to me,
wow,
there's just I'm not going to be mean to their sales reps. They're not responsible for it, but I'm just going to be like, we're just probably not going to do business with y'all. And if they ask why, it's very simple. We spoke to your organization. I did personally. Mm-hmm. And you guys had zero follow-up. So if you did that to someone you were trying to hire, what are you going to do to a customer?
Ouch. Yeah. Interesting one. So the new role that you've just got into at AP4, I know, is it utilities?
It's utilities, yes.
Yeah, so I don't know if you saw, but Rob Lee from Dragos was on in the Senate today, and it sort of live streamed about the
I haven't seen it yet. I'm gonna watch it.
I won't spoil it. It was really, really interesting. He's obviously a super switched on man within the space, and fascinating to think how crazy and dangerous it is, the whole critical infrastructure piece.
So I think people often overlook critical infrastructure, and I think that's the reason I took the AP4 position. One, I mean, the people there are unbelievable. Like, let me just tell you, from the process itself, to the whole kind of negotiations, to the onboarding, just spot on. One of the greatest teams and professional teams I've been a part of. But the mission around utilities, like I said, when I wanted to get a role, my next role, people, a lot of recruiters reached out. Mm. What are you looking for? We'll help you. I'm looking for something meaningful. That's where I am in my life today. I want to do something meaningful. I want to make something better than what it was when I got it. In utilities, to me, after attending several utilities events over the last 3-4 months, it's kind of made it a point that I'm like, this industry could use some more smart people getting into it. And I had a conversation with my good buddy James McQuiggan at an event in Miami a few months ago, last month, in fact, in February. And it's like, James, this is an industry that needs a lot of smart people. It's very frustrating. It needs people with fortitude that can understand that changes here are slow, but it needs change, and people that can see it through. And I'm like, well, that's the challenge I want. And AP4 came through, and it was just match made in heaven for me.
Nice. What about when you're actually hiring for folks for your team? What are you looking for then? You mentioned smart just then and intelligent folks.
Yeah, so I'm looking for passionate people, right? I don't care about your certs. Care if you went to university or not. No disrespect to both of those institutions, but neither of them tells me who you are. There's some very smart people who went to. There's some very dumb people who have PhDs. We can all point to one or two in our lives or within our circle that you can be like, this person went 12 years to college, got a PhD. They're $500,000 in debt. No wonder.
Yeah.
Other people don't learn from college and certs, and that's okay. I self-taught. Some people can self-teach. Look for passion. I look for integrity.
Nice. What about
be honest? Be honest.
Yeah, 100%. What about some of the resources that you use to self-learn? What's your go-to at the moment, or have you got any particular resources you look at?
So there's a lot of great people out there that do a lot of awesome content, right? You can shout out Jason Dion. He does some amazing stuff at entry level. Jason and his team. You can talk about Gerald, and I forgot Gerald's last name.
Auger.
Yeah, Gerald Auger. Yep, exactly. He does some unbelievable content, and I watch those guys. A lot of their content is predominantly entry level, but it's great content for leaders to understand what your entry level people are coming with hands-on experience, right? Someone who comes from Gerald, from going through a bunch of Gerald trainings, is probably worth more than a Security Plus. Just saying. Like, Gerald's a superstar in his world of the work he does. So is Jason Dion, the stuff that he does around IT and security and networking. And like, I don't know that there are other people who are able to do that. I mean, and give people hands-on, right? So someone's coming understanding how to use Wireshark. Someone's coming and knows how to use the tools they need to, and Nmap. And it's not just, a half a page in a book. It's 4 or 5 hour learning modules. I think that's what we want.
Nice. I've spoken to a few like CISOs on the pod now, and common theme is that they talk about mentoring and having mentors. Who do you have a mentor first of all, or who do you really respect in the industry?
So what there's about 2 or 3 people that I highly respect. Gary Hayslip's one of them, right? I think Gary's just the work, the stuff that he's done for the CISO community. Andy Ellis is another one. Andy's done a ton for this community. Alan Alford, he's done a bunch for the community as well. You can go on. I'm sure I'm like forgetting a whole bunch. Roger Grimes, he's not a CISO, but Roger Grimes over at KnowBe4, the guy's written like 18, 19 books now. 19 books. I have all of his books. All of his books are addicting. I start reading it and I can't put it down.
Nice. Awesome. Well, I guess to wrap this one up, what's next for you, James? I know you've obviously got the new role.
So new role, kind of this week going through some of the onboarding stuff and kind of easing my way in. Well, what's next for me? Building a team. Obviously, I'll be hiring here in the very, very near future. Maybe as early as next week, I'll start to post jobs out, right? And I think moreover, there's a continue to learn, right? There's, whenever someone puts expert in their LinkedIn profile, it's a red flag for me, because how can you be an expert at anything in a world that changes so fast? Can you master anything today? And by the way, this goes to, you asked me a question a minute ago about what do you look for in candidates? And I said, integrity, but that goes to the integrity in the interview process. Be honest about what you know, be honest about what you don't know. That'll go far, far more than you lying and potentially getting caught a few weeks into the job.
Yeah.
And you lose a lot of the points and a lot of the forgiveness budget that has been put in place for you when we hired. Because every CISO has some sort of apology budget for new hires. When I hire you, I'm wondering just how big that budget is. And I want to know, honestly, how big should that budget be for you? So being honest is critical.
Got it. James, thanks for coming on, brother.
Thanks for having me, buddy. Good luck on the podcast and good luck in the new business. I'm so excited.
Thanks, Brian.